to Asenso Tayo Leaders, where we bring you real stories from leaders like you so you can lead with more clarity, direction, and confidence.
Welcome back to the Asenso Tayo Leaders podcast. I am Michael back and am joined, as always, by my trusty sidekick, Maria Asoro. How are you, Maria?
Fabulous. Just came out of a wonderful chat. It was just so fulfilling, Becky, to have that opportunity to speak with a great leader, so much purpose, so much passion, and so much things to share for a lot of not just ladies, but Filipinos in general who are leaders in their own ways and wanting to step into leadership or just quite unsure what to do in their career. This one is for you guys.
I just felt like that whole chat was just such a privilege. But yeah, Monica was also just such a cool guest. She's had so many awesome experiences. And I just think there's so much that our audience can relate to, particularly, I would say, if you are a Filipina who wants to kick butt and be awesome and make great things happen in the world, you potentially will fangirl over Monica and what she's achieved and the way she sees the world. Because, yeah, you are her audience.
Today, we're honored of being joined by such an incredible Filipinas that we have been talking about earlier. Somebody who has been in the world of BPO recruitment and beyond. She is a passionate advocate for empowering women. She currently serves as a senior executive, in fact, a COO at PSG Global Solutions, a global leader in outsourced recruiting services, and also the founder of Victoria Heart Strong organization. And she will be talking about that a lot in this episode. And her influence really extends far beyond her professional role. She's very active in a lot of global and local leadership communities and working alongside prominent Filipino business leaders, particularly women in commerce. With a career rooted impact, purpose, leadership, she just brings heart, vision, and such deep commitment to really lifting others as she moves whatever she wants to do. So we are incredibly blessed to have Monica Maralit with us in this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, true.
3 M's. Maria, Monica, Michael.
Yes, we should start a post-it note business. We'd make a lot of money.
We can go on the road and be singers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the 3
Yeah.
M's.
Remember that song, Bop? We can be the Bop.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
love
my
that.
gosh. That is
The new
so
Hanson.
The new Hanson.
Yeah.
The Mansons. Oh, no, that's not good. That's not good.
The only two
Alright.
Mansons I think of when you say Manson is Charlie Manson or Marilyn Manson. Either way, pretty extreme characters. Right?
extreme.
Yeah. Not for
Yeah.
us, but anyway. Yeah. But
Yeah.
actually, my complete name is Maria Monica. Maria Monica.
Oh.
Victoria. Yeah. Mhm.
But
Yeah.
So you are a 3M.
Yeah.
He
I
is.
am.
And we also, just like we've started recording, I don't know, do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
Yes, I do. Not a lot, but sometimes it's like usually Oprah or
Oh, cool.
usually I listen to more master classes, but those are similar. So
Ah.
yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so like usually I suppose the traditional format for an interview is like read out an intro, start the questions, and we're very open to that. But recently we've been playing around with a different format, which we're starting to see in other podcasts, where you just kind of start talking and it's like the episode starts almost like midway through a conversation.
Yeah.
Got some areas and questions that we want to hit, but more than anything, we just want to have a very interesting conversation with a very interesting person.
Yes.
Okay, great. Wow. Did you find somebody interesting? Very interesting. No.
I mean, you made a Hanson joke very early on. I think you instantly ticked the interesting box by default, right? Are you in Cebu?
I am not. I'm actually in Manila.
cool.
And I go to Cebu sometimes for work, but I'm actually based in Manila in BGC. So I think I will be back in Cebu. I might be in August again. Yeah. I travel so much that sometimes I forget where I've been and when it happened. Somebody asked me, when was the last time you traveled? And I was like, oh, I think it might have been in January. And it wasn't. It was like 2 weeks ago. I was in India and I totally forgot.
Oh, wow.
I was like, January, I was in the US. And then, no, Monica, 2 weeks ago, you were in India. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah. So it's a lot.
Hmm. But
I
your
feel like
family is in BGC?
My family is mostly, yes, here in Manila in BGC,
Ah,
but my brother and his family, they live in Chiang Mai, Thailand. So,
okay.
yeah, so he's opened up a business there and lives there with his wife and his 3-year-old. His 27-year-old, though, lives here in Manila. So he loves Thailand. We used to live there too as kids. We were there for 4 years in high school in Bangkok. And so he just kind of loved the culture. And I do too, but not so, not haven't making. Haven't really taken the step to move out there, but I'm coming to the age where I can actually get like a retirement visa. Retirement.
Retirement?
Yes, yes, I'm at that age. Will I qualify for it? So yeah, yeah,
you seem to have a very polished, westernized English accent. Have you lived in the Western world, or like have you lived
yeah.
abroad quite a bit?
Yeah. I was actually born in the US. My family, my mom and my dad had moved or immigrated to the US. My mom's a nurse, my dad was the doctor, and they immigrated to the US. And then the three of us kids were born in the US. So I lived a lot in the Georgia and Florida area
Oh.
before moving to Thailand for high school. And then after high school, I moved to the Philippines for college. Yeah.
Okay. And then the Philippines kind of got a hold of you and you just that there's some,
Mm.
Yeah.
what was it about the Philippines that kept you there?
So I think I just, I'll start from coming from Bangkok in Thailand. When I moved there, it was such a big shift in culture because it was so different. I grew up in the US. I lived in a small town. We were the only Asians. We were the only Asian family within like a 3-town surrounding area. So I
Mm.
grew up thinking I was white, and I realized, oh, when I moved, oh, I'm not white. I'm not white. Um, so when I moved to Bangkok, it was such a different culture. It was
Yeah.
so far off from what I was used to, the language I didn't understand, and all of that. But when I went to college, it was like I was suddenly accepted, I guess. And it felt like I understood everybody, not just the language itself, but I understood the way people thought, the way
Mm.
people would joke around, and, in music, movies, TV, all of that was very similar to the US. It's like,
Yeah.
I had just moved from one state to another, except this state had all Asians and had all Filipinos, kind of like
Mm.
California, I guess.
Oh.
But yeah, and so I made a lot of great friends in college, and they're my best friends now. And we, live or die for each other. They're my ride or die girls.
Mm.
And so that's what pretty much kept me. And then when I started working, it was just at the beginning. I started out at Citibank as a city phone officer. So I was doing customer service and bank accounts services. And it was just at the cusp of the BPO boom. We called them call
Ah,
centers back then. So in
yeah.
Yeah.
2000, they were called call centers.
Yeah.
And we were at the dawn of that. And I was part of eTelecare, which was one of the first companies, one of the very first call centers that had opened up here.
Yeah.
And so it was just such an easy transition, college to Citibank, Citibank to eTel. It was just all so fluid. And so I just stayed and, built my career here and haven't looked back, I
Mm.
guess. So that's what
Mm.
really kept me. It's just the culture, the people. I just
Mm.
felt, like this was home. Um, and
Mm.
if you grow up kind of what we used to call third culture kids, where you have multiple cultures and you don't exactly know where you fit in,
Mm.
you lose kind of, am I Filipino, but I don't know how to speak Tagalog, and I have an American
Mm.
accent, and
Yeah.
everybody will say, you're Filipino, and in the US they'll say you're Filipino. In the Philippines you'll
Yeah.
say no, you're American. So,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
I felt accepted here by everyone, and so that's really what
Mm.
kept me here.
Yeah.
Mm.
Was it your decision to study here in the Philippines? Or was it
Very
your
good.
parents?
Very good question, Maria. That was a very good question. It was not. It was actually not my decision.
Mm.
Because when I was 18, I was living in Thailand. in
Mm.
Bangkok. And all I wanted to do was go back to the US because that was what I was familiar with. And, you have all of these kind of hopes and dreams of what your college life is going to be like.
Mm.
And so I started to apply for some colleges and universities and look for, different type of organizations that I wanted to be a part of.
Mm.
But I had also taken all of the exams here in the Philippines for Ateneo La Salle and UP. Um, and so, when it came down to it, my mom said, okay, well, if you go to the Philippines and go to school in the Philippines, and of course, in her mind, she said, she was thinking, I only want you to go to Ateneo. She said, I'll pay for everything. In room, board, allowance, you get everything you want.
Okay.
And they'd be living in Bangkok. But if you go to the US, choose the school that you want, wherever you want to
Mm.
go, but you're
You pay
paying for
for.
it.
Oh my.
I was like, well, I'm 18. I have no skills. I have
Mm.
no degree. I have no means of money. So I guess I'm going to the Philippines.
Mm.
So that was it. But, it wasn't necessarily a terrible idea because, here I am. And I really enjoyed my college life. It was so much fun compared to anything else. So yeah, it worked out. Mom knows best, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much she didn't dictate it for sure, but it was pretty obvious that she kind of like directed your
She
decision.
kind of directed it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. She got everything she wanted.
Yeah.
This is what we keep talking about, Vaki, and Anna Marquez mentioned about
Yeah.
Asian
Yeah.
moms. Yeah. So
Yes.
pretty much evident with Monica's
Yeah.
life too.
Yeah. Tiger Asian moms. Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
It's an interesting thing that pops up a lot in our podcast is that connection between family expectations and I don't know whether you call it your purpose or your calling or even just like
Yeah.
listening to your inner voice, but navigating that I don't know two forces that are often pulling in different directions.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's funny how the parents are still very influential in their kids, regardless of their age,
Mm.
So, sometimes when we have new employees, they're younger and all of that. One of the things that they take into consideration, whether joining us or leaving us or things like that, is their parents. What does their
Mm.
family think? What does their parents
100%.
think? Right. And
Mm.
I'm like, can't you make your own decision? But
Mm.
yeah, it's still very influential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've only really painted the picture for us of the first steps of your
Yeah,
career after
sure.
university, but were you one of these people who had a clear idea of where you wanted to go and you were just figuring out how to get there? Or did your career take twists and turns that you potentially couldn't have predicted at the start?
I think it definitely took a different twist that I wasn't expecting. I think, I mean, nobody goes into college thinking they're going to be in the call centers back then. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
Yeah.
now, but back
Yeah.
then nobody knew what it was. And so, I had really thought that I was going to be in broadcasting. And I really thought that I was going to be, the Asian Oprah. That was my
Mm.
dream, to be
Oh,
Asian Oprah.
wow.
Mm.
Yeah. So I wanted to have a talk show. I wanted to help people realize their best self and,
Yeah.
help them realize that they can make decisions and empower them, all of those kind of things.
Mm.
And then once I got into it, I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I could be in journalism. It was a little tough. So it just so happened that I had taken, my mom said, you know, I paid for your college. I paid for all of your education. Now you got to get off your butt and get a job because you can't sit here and watch Real World all day long. Because I had,
Mm.
after college, I didn't have a job and all I did was watch TV. And she said, I'm going to start charging you rent. I'm going to start charging you rent. So you got to get a job because you got to pay me. And so my friend goes, all right, well, you know what? I'm at Citibank now. I'm an intern. Why don't you try out for this? I said, what is it? He said, I don't really know, but just come in and, do the interview. At least it's one interview down. And so I did, and I was accepted. And I went in thinking, I don't know what this is, but I found out. And my mom was like, I sent you to college so that you could be a telephone operator. I mean,
Ah.
Oh.
so she was like, what are you thinking? You went to all of the private schools, you went to Ateneo, you studied broadcasting, and now you want to be a telephone operator. And do you think that you can double your pay in, 5 years? And so I was like, you know what? I have to pay rent. So I'm
Mm.
going to take the job. I don't know what it is, but so I was on the phones, I was a city phone officer. I did customer service for credit cards, and that's all mostly in Filipino or in Tagalog, which, I struggled with. But, kept going and did it. And then after 2.5 years, eTelecare, which was one of the first call centers that had opened up in the Philippines in 2000, had called and said, "Hey, do you want to try this out?" And I was like, again, I don't know what this is, but sure. And it had offered me twice as much than I was making at Citibank. So in 2.5 years, I made twice as much that
Ah,
I did when I started. So I went back to my mom and said, "Well, yeah, I did it in 2.5 years." So, and she said, "But you're still a telephone operator." And I was like, "Well, hurtful, Mom, nonetheless." So, but I was I started as a manager, and I was the 27th employee hired at eTelecare.
Oh,
And we
wow.
knew nothing, the call center was so new. There
Yeah.
was like maybe one other, and we just didn't know anything. But Jim Frankie and Derek Hawley, those were the two founders of the company. And then Benedict Hernandez, who was the first general manager, had come in like a few months after I joined. They kind of built the whole thing. And I was a part of building e-telecare and essentially the industry, because all of these different things that we did to develop what it would be like when you would sit down on the phones, and how do you do QA, and how do you do all of these different things that wasn't established yet. And I was a part of that. And
mm,
when e-telecare, and years later, e-telecare eventually bought another company in the US. I went over and they said, why don't you just go around and everything, and see what it's like. And I said, okay. One of the managers at the call center there in Arizona, we were in Scottsdale, Arizona. He said, "Okay, I'll take you around." And he probably didn't really know anything except that I came from the Philippines. And he said, "Let me show you how we do our performance management system." And he said, "Okay, let me sit you down. Okay, so this is what we do. We have a scorecard, and they have all of their metrics here, all of the weights and all of this other stuff." It was on Excel at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, "This looks oddly familiar. This file looks exactly like the file that I created for the scorecards in the
no.
Philippines." And it was the same
Oh,
one. It was the
Oh,
exact same one,
wow.
and the same colors. They didn't even change the color, same colors, same font. It was exactly the same way. The formulas were exactly. And I was like, what if it? And so it was kind of a proud moment for me to be able to
mm,
see that, 5 or 6 years later, being
Wow.
toured around a company and saying, "Here's how we do this." But I was a part of creating that performance management system. So from there, somebody asked me once, while I was in telecare, "Is this really what you wanted to do with your life? I mean, did you really want to be
Mm,
here?" And I said, "No, I wanted to be Oprah and I
yeah.
wanted to help people." But then I told her I realized that the heart of it, what I wanted to do, was to be able to help people realize
Mm,
themselves and develop themselves, to becoming better than they were, or realizing they
mm,
could be better than they were, which is what I was actually doing
mm,
as a leader at eTelecare, as a manager, et cetera. I was developing people, and I was helping them realize something beyond themselves. It just wasn't in the form of a talk show,
mm,
but it was in the form of being a leader for them and creating other leaders who could do the same.
mm,
So, to answer your question, it wasn't exactly the way I had planned it, but the root of what I loved and wanted to do was still there. And
yeah.
so I found kind of that purpose and meaning, nonetheless, and without really, looking for it and really saying, "Okay, this is what I'm going to do." But it was just something that I realized after reflecting on what I had wanted and what was I actually doing,
mm.
if that made any sense.
Made a lot of sense. Yeah, and
Oh
I
my
just
God.
find that idea really interesting. Is I think all of us have that thing that when we were a kid we wanted to be when we grew up. And I mean, when you're really young, some of the things are hilarious. But then as you get older, maybe into your teenage years, um, there are, I suppose, themes, and some of them, you could argue it's just your soul expressing itself as
Right.
it's learning about itself, going, "Hey, this is like what brings me joy," and I've experienced a lot of people, I think, who hold on to those things and go, "Oh, in a different life, I would have done this." But I
Yeah.
think there's
Yeah.
another path, which is like you don't have to upend your life
Right.
and go do this enormous pivot. You actually can tap into the why and the what behind a lot of that stuff and bring it
Yeah.
into your
Yeah.
current work.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
this is an example, right? I wanted to be a radio host when I was a teenager, and
Uh-huh.
this is a way I can get that same feeling of being a
Yeah.
radio host, but doing
Yeah.
it, you know, in my
Oh my
current
gosh, I
role
didn't know
with
that.
Maria. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
He did.
So yeah, and I think that's a really interesting message for a lot of people out there
Yeah.
who potentially are doing a role and going, oh well, this isn't really what I always wanted to do. It's like, well, how can you make your current role more of what you always wanted to do?
Right. Yeah. And
Mm.
even today, I still am now doing a lot of speaking engagements, which I
Mm,
really enjoy as well. So, I either talk about leadership or something about recruiting or something in my nonprofit organization supporting underprivileged girls. So now I'm on stage and, very
mm.
similarly to what I had wanted to do, but now I kind of do that as well. So yeah, you find ways and eventually,
Yeah.
what you really wanted to do kind of, if it's supposed to be that way, it seeps into your life.
Mm.
Yeah. As long as you let it, because you can also fight it or ignore it, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's really great that you shared that, Monica, because a lot of so we have what we call a career Asenso program. So basically in
Hmm.
career Asenso, we help fresh graduates get workplace ready and things like that. And often I find when, we had a lot of job fairs recently, and one of the things in conversations with these fresh grads are often like, oh, I'm actually in this course because I didn't really know what to do, but then I feel like talking to you, it's also another unknown territory that I might be jumping into. Like, what is
Yeah.
the assurance that I would really get into the kind of
Mm,
goal that I want to be? I want to be this, I want to be that, and stuff like that. So, I think a lot of our younger generation, I think, and even for us before, like,
Hmm.
well, somehow for us before, Monica, I think we just follow what our parents would say.
Yeah.
Uh,
mm,
but the younger generation have a very interesting kind of dynamic because they're given some freedom and they're exposed to so many things.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have spoken to a lot of younger people as well, particularly in
Yeah.
call center. There's a lot of people who would
Yeah.
come in, yeah, come in there. I guess I suppose if you were given an opportunity to talk to them, tell them, how you were able to pivot and kind of like change that mindset from someone thinking
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna be Oprah in the Philippines to
Right.
accepting, like, what did you do what did it take for you to get to that kind of mentality or mindset?
Yeah. So I think if, I actually do talk quite a bit about this as well, but, for the younger generation, it's
Mm.
also kind of a very different generation, the
mm.
Gen
Yeah.
Zs, millennials, they're already a little bit older, so not to worry about them, but the Gen Zs, they're AI native, and they're digital native. They don't know what it's like without it. It's so they have a wealth of information, whether it's good or bad, out there for them. But I think if I were to speak to them, regardless of what generation you come from, finding something that you really love to do is probably key. And I talk about if you know ikigai, the concept of ikigai. Find out,
Mhm.
what is it that you love, what is it that you're good at, what does the world need, and can you get paid for it? If you are able to kind of go through that exercise and determine, first, what is your purpose and your meaning? Why are you here, and why are you doing what you are doing? If it doesn't mean anything to you or is not, speaking to you, then it's probably not something that you are going to live well with. And you have to be also good at it, and you can either be born with something and be very good at it, or it's very easy for you to develop it, and other times it's not. But you happen to love it, but you have no talent, and it's not natural ability that you can get to it, but you can hone into it.
Mm,
And so if they can figure out, if you took those 4 questions and really thought about
Mm.
your day and your life and, where do you want to spend your time, then that will lead you to where you're going to find the most satisfaction, because it's very stressful to be in a job, just as a job itself, and not really like or love what you're doing,
mm.
because you're just going to spend the majority of your whole day in your week doing something that you don't like. It's going to
So true.
suck. it's
Mm,
going to suck, I mean, we don't
mm,
want our lives to suck. I mean, we need, we need to feel good, and we need to feel
mm.
free, and we need to be able to give of that to others, because if you're feeling terrible about your day, other people will too. And so it doesn't, really help you. So even if you're in a job right now that you may not think is for you, think about first, what is it that you love? Is there something that you love to do and that you're very good at, and you can somehow integrate it into the work that you're doing,
Mm,
whatever that may be? Or is it something that you can supplement your life with? Because it doesn't
mm.
necessarily have to be in the work you're doing, but it can be supplemented in
Yep.
some way. And that's where you can find some freedom,
Yeah.
to be yourself. So that's what I would encourage people to do.
Mm. So
Yeah.
then what would your advice be? Because I think like that there's so much wisdom in what you said, but then I would say if there's someone out there who's got that itch to go, I'm built for more, I want to do something different. They also have that other voice in their head, which is, what will my parents think? What will my family think if I
Yeah.
take this leap or pivot or actually express what I want rather than live a life based on what other people want?
Right.
As someone who's had direct experience with that, I suppose, what would your advice be on how to navigate the other side of that coin?
Yeah. I would probably say, somebody accept that there are going to be a lot of things that you're going to try and you're going to fail at. I mean, it's inevitable that you're going to fail at something. Like, oh, I don't want to try it because I might not be good at it, or I don't want to do it because I might fail. Just accept that is probably going to happen, but what you do with that failure really matters too. Did you learn from it, etc.? Can you pivot from what you've learned? And when it comes to the parents, this is a really tough thing, especially culturally. I think is really, really tough. You have to be, sometimes, parents will not listen, and will not, really support what you're doing. I think, though, sometimes it's important just to stand your ground. If you're an adult, be an adult. At some point, you need to be an adult.
Mm,
This is what I believe in, and this is what I want to do. So I'm going to try it. You can even have sort of a compromise. You know what? If you're right, then, and this was a terrible idea, then fine. I will,
mm,
go back. I'll try something else, or I'll try to do something else. But I think it's still important that for people to kind of assert that they're going to live their lives, without disrespecting your parents or
mm,
disrespecting your elders. I think that's the bigger thing here, is that you can still honor them and you can still respect them, but still live the life that's your own. But you
mm,
have to have a very open conversation about it, and then accept that they probably are not going to believe you. They're
mm,
not going to believe in you. They're not going to be in agreement with you.
mm,
But, trust doesn't necessarily require agreement.
mm,
So I think if there's a way that you can have that conversation, which takes a lot of courage, especially if you've been doing what your parents have told you for all your life. But it will take a lot of courage for you to be able to say, hey, mom, dad, this is what I really want to do. I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for it. Because if I don't, then I'll never know if I could have done this. Um, I think that that's what I would probably say. Just,
mm,
take the courage to have the conversation, and pursue it if you can pursue it. Come back and say, hey, great, I did it. Or no, I failed. Let me try something else.
mm,
But it takes a lot to be able to just say, all right, this is my life, and
mm,
I'm going to live or die on my decisions. I can't always live somebody else's life. And so I think that would be my advice, is just, have a very open conversation and be very open about, it's interesting. This happened with my nephew and my brother. Gosh, I'm going to say it. It happened with, hopefully they don't watch. But my brother and my nephew, he's a little bit older, and he wanted to go abroad. He wanted to, study his master's degree and
mm,
in sports science or sports management or something like that.
Mhm.
And so he had gone to my brother and asked for money and said,
mm,
I need a lot of money. I'm going to go into this program. And he's like, my brother's like, why do you want to do this? This
mm,
doesn't make any sense, for you to do this, because you've never talked about wanting to do this. This doesn't sound like a passion of yours. I've never heard you
Mhm.
say it. I've never heard you talk about.
mm,
So they had a really good conversation. And so what ended up happening was that my brother did help, my nephew realize that this was not necessarily something that he really wanted as a career. Like, he didn't really want to be in sports management. He didn't really want a master's degree in sports management. He wanted to live abroad. But had they not had the conversation, and really opened up to each other, they would not have had the understanding of, this is my experience and this is what I see in you. This is what I really want. Okay, this is the result. And so I think the relationship is better for it. Obviously, it's a father-son thing, so there's always going to be struggles, but but at least they had a conversation, and they had a moment where both of them stood in agreement with each other, or at least they trusted each other enough to have that open conversation. So yeah, it's tough though. It's tough with parents, with family.
I think, any caregiver, their priority is to keep you safe, and often that means dialing down the risk and doing something they know is predictable. But that doesn't always mean it's right,
Right.
And as you've spoken, I've reflected on times in my life where someone who I really looked up to, who was, say, a caregiver, gave me advice, and it ended up probably not being the right advice. And that's a moment where you go, oh, okay, they don't know everything. They're just
Right.
giving their best advice based on what they know, but they don't know who I am and what's in my heart and how I'm feeling. So you can kind of respect that opinion, but I suppose at the same time also realize that they are a different person with their own beliefs and attitude and perspective, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the key, is that just coming to the table with the understanding that they're just trying to understand as well, and you're just trying to understand. And it may not necessarily be the same thing, but the intent is the same. But at the end of the day, it's your life that you have to live.
Yeah. So what was your path to entrepreneurship, Monica? How did you navigate from those early days in telecare to the point you're at now?
Oh, so well, after Utelicare, the founder of Utelicare, Jim Frankie, and some others in the company that we had worked together, Vivek Pavanaban and Brian Cotter, they had decided to open up their own company. And of course, they had worked with me for many years and knew me and asked me to leave Utelicare and join them, which I did. And, I never really thought of myself as kind of an entrepreneur, because again, it's one of those things that you take a risk on. And, I've always been one of those corporate girls. You join a company and, you play with somebody else's money, not your own. And if you lose that money, it's not your own.
It's not your own. It's okay. No, I'm kidding.
So, but I was at a point in my career that, I was older and more mature. I understood, business a little bit more. And when they asked me to come, I was still an employee, but they treated me as if I were one of the founders and one of the, founding members of their company, and kind of learned from there. And I've been with the company now 17 years. And they've since moved on, and they've gone off to do their own thing again. But, I've stayed. But one of the things that I did a few years ago, after they sold the company, obviously as a founder, I was given a bonus. And so what I decided to do with that was to open up a foundation or a nonprofit organization called the Victoria Heartstrong Organization that supported underprivileged young women in high school and college. And I'm a big advocate for women and young women and education. So, I wanted to support them in that way. And, at first I decided, I'm just going to give some money. I'll give an allowance. I'll, do that and everything. And I'll register the nonprofit with the SEC. So it's legitimate. But when I started talking to them, and I started to realize that they needed more than just money. They needed, real guidance, and they needed access to certain things, and they needed an opportunity. So I decided that I was going to do more than that and create, these programs, and really build this nonprofit into like an organization that could really support them in a way that wasn't just handouts. And what I didn't realize, though, when I started this, because I hadn't done enough research was that, having a nonprofit organization is like having like a company. Like, you have to register it, and there's all of
Yeah.
these filings, and there's business permits, and all of these things that you would do for a normal company, you also do for the nonprofit, which I had never taken into account. And so it's been interesting for sure. And I've had to learn to do everything on my own, which has been um, very eye opening, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard to just do this on my own because I don't want to. I mean, I didn't have necessarily money to have staff. I don't have my own staff to run
Yeah.
it. Now I do, now that I've got a little bit more funding. So I have staff. But before, everything I would have to try to figure out how to fill out the forms, and how to talk to the barangay guy for the permits, and talk to whoever for all of those things. But in the end, well, I'm only coming into 3 years now. You kind of look back and go, oh, this is different from being an employee, because if this doesn't work out, I have all of these scholars who are depending on the allowances and the programs and everything. It's almost like thinking of your employees. If my company doesn't work out, and I have to shut down, what happens to the employees, right? You have to let them go. And it's kind of the same way. So you feel even more responsible and accountable to making it work, even to the point of you might not have enough money through funding or through, let's say, revenue or sales or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So you end up digging into your personal funds to be able to support that, to keep it going, thinking, okay, I'll take a little bit now, but I'll have to figure out ways and means to be able to replenish that, and then try to figure out ways to keep it going. It's been a journey, but it's very interesting to learn about, marketing, the business aspect of it, the accounting, the tax filings, the marketing of it, trying to figure out how to find donors, working with the partner organizations where the scholars are, and then finding companies who want to also work on programs with the scholars, like immersion programs and things like that. So, yeah, it's been a different, kind of shift of mindset, because you go from, all right, every 2 weeks, I'm going to get that cash.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I perform well or not, I'm going to get that cash. To a direct, if I don't perform well, somebody's going to be hurt, or somebody's going to have that consequence that I'm responsible for. So I think that's the biggest shift, coming from being an employee at a company and actually being kind of an entrepreneur, because now you're not playing with somebody else's money, you're playing with your own.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I don't know if I answered that question.
Yes.
You definitely did. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the stakes are higher, that the downsides are more grim because everything falls on you, and if it does or doesn't work, it ultimately is because of the decisions you're making. But I imagine
absolutely.
the flip side of that is that there's the upside too, is that the fulfillment, and when it does work and when you see the impact you're creating, it feels different than when you're, say, in a bigger corporate.
Yeah, absolutely. I told you that story about seeing the scorecards in Scottsdale, Arizona. That was like a super proud moment in my career too. There have been others as well. Coming out of COVID, all of that, those are proud moments. But when I see the girls, and we've taken them, for example, to a museum, and they've never been to a museum before, and they're kind of awestruck. If you've ever come to Manila and you go to the National Museum, it's actually quite nice. And they're kind of awestruck by it all. And at first, when I thought, gosh, they're probably bored. They're kids. Who wants to go to a museum when you're a kid?
Yeah.
But later on, speaking to them, it's like it was more than that, because they had never been there, and they had never seen something like that. And so it was something that they were just trying to absorb. And we went to an art museum, and I had asked one of the girls, so what part of the museum did you like? I mean, was there anything in particular any art that you particularly liked? Mia liked flowers. She chose this one artwork that was post World War II. And for me, it's very dark looking. It's all, it's a very
gory,
very
kinda.
dark, not so much gore, but, sunflowers and sunshine.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's interesting. Why did you why did you choose that one? Why did you like that one so much? She said, well, because when I look at it, it reminds me of a warning that we shouldn't, it's kind of a warning for the future because of what happened in the past.
Oh,
And I was like, wow, you're 15. You're 15 years old. And she was that struck by the artwork that spoke to her.
yeah.
She had assessed that in her mind, like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
this is speaking to me saying, hey, this is a warning.
yeah.
Let's avoid this in the future because this is what happened to us in the past. It's
Mm,
like, wow. And that's, really something that we had created for them. We had created an opportunity for them to even think about that and
yep.
to be exposed to
Mm,
art. Um,
mm,
and I think, them meeting other strong women in other companies
Yeah.
also gives them an opportunity to see other types of careers because for them again,
right.
if they come from the underprivileged, they only know of what maybe their parents do.
Mm,
Yeah,
They're maybe what they see go to the bank or they see
yeah,
an SM cashier. That's all they see. But if they can see somebody who has built their career in IT in another company, then that opens the world up to them thinking, oh, okay, now I see what else is out there. And then I connect them to the women that are working in the companies to be
ah,
either mentors or to be touch points for them to say, hey, you know what? When you have to do your internship, hey, call me because we might have an opening in our company. Again,
mm,
it creates an opening for access and opportunity for the girls. And that brings me fulfillment because I'm connecting these women, corporate women, who may not also have a lot of opportunity to seek out scholars like this and connecting to scholars who probably wouldn't have the opportunity to do the same
mm,
and have them join together and kind of give that opportunity for them to learn from each other
mm.
too. So, yeah, it's very different. It's a very different feeling, but you're right. There's the risk on that one side, but the gain is so much more than that risk.
Mm.
so powerful. And while you were talking, Monica, all that's in my mind is like you are the absolute benchmark of somebody who is like, I'm gonna jump ahead and I'm just gonna figure it out later.
You're right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
it sounded like you've got everything sorted. If I was first time hearing you, it's like, oh my gosh, this lady has just figured things out
yeah.
instantly. But I was just so freaking amazed that you have,
yeah.
even the tax filing you did, and
Yes.
even going to I would imagine you went to mountain barangays for, I guess.
Yeah. We would go to the different, I went,
Gosh.
you go to a church and you kind of see what it's like there and, you talk to them. Our latest batch of scholars that we just got and interviewed last a weekend is from Marikina. And, Marikina is known for shoemaking.
Yes, yes.
Ah,
So these group of girls are from a community of artisans and shoemakers.
Mm.
So
They
that's
have a
what
big
their
shoe there,
parents.
Becky. There's like a
Yeah,
big
oh, right.
statue.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, yeah,
try to
yeah.
yeah,
search it.
Like a
Mm.
tourist
yeah,
attraction. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So because that's where shoes are made. So I have a friend who owns a zapateria, which is like an artisan hub, and her family have been generations of designers and shoemakers, and so people who kind of work within her community, she opened it up and said, hey, we've got a lot of girls who are looking for opportunities and, looking for help. And so we decided to collaborate together. We've got 13 new
Wow.
girls that will join us this coming school year from that
Mm.
community. So yeah, very exciting.
Wow.
Yeah. But you're
Like,
right. I am the type that's just going to go, I have an idea. Let me jump in. I'll figure it out later.
yeah.
I'll just figure it out later. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how all the best stories start is with an idea or an adventure, but no idea of the details. The most fun stories in all of our lives would probably involve some element of that.
Yeah, something unplanned,
Yes.
something
Mm,
a little unplanned and, spontaneous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been fun.
What it sounds like to me, though, is that, you had this calling to be the Asian Oprah. And,
Oh, good.
you said to us, like, a lot of this was about empowerment and
Yeah.
helping people think bigger and be their best self.
Yeah.
And you started a not-for-profit, but to do a version of that. But I think, like, a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this in the past, you go, okay, well, I've got to be the one who does that. But you've actually structured it in a way where you connect with successful people in their careers, and they are like the mini Oprahs empowering
Hmm.
these girls. And it's almost
Yeah,
like a really clever way to spread your impact and realize that there's only so much you can do, but if you can connect to
that's
more
right.
people and create a community, all of a sudden
Yes.
the outcome of Victoria Heartstrong just compounds dramatically.
Yeah, and you got it. You got it spot on, because it can't be just one person. But I found that there are so many people who want to help, they just don't know how,
Yeah.
or they have
Mm,
it within
right.
them that they want to be able to do something more than just their kind of everyday life, every day going to work, etc. And so being able to tap into that, and give them a venue or a way to be able to express that,
Mm,
and help the other to help the scholars and the girls
mm,
is is really impactful. I call it, kind of building your tribe. So I talk a
Yeah.
lot about, how you build
Yes.
your tribe.
Yeah.
You get your people, and you call upon them when you need help. And so I
mm,
have a tribe, and so I want, that to continue to grow, and everybody kind of builds their own tribes as well. But the objective is, really to be able to build people up and make sure that we build the women up as well, young women
mm,
without, the access and the opportunity, so that we can better the nation. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
it seems like a very ambitious thing to do, considering all the different kinds of corruption that's happening in the Philippines.
mm,
But
Yeah.
that just because that exists doesn't mean that we can't do good where we are. And
mm,
Yeah.
that's what, we have to continue to strive to do. But yeah,
mm,
absolutely spot on, Michael. You got, it's identifying people who can continue that
mm.
legacy and that
Yeah.
ripple effect throughout the communities and the nation.
Thanks for listening to Asenso Tayo Leaders. If something landed with you today, don't just keep it in your head. Make sure you try it. Kaya mo yan. Asenso Tayo Leaders is brought to you by 5Elk, a team who helps great businesses build great offshore teams. If you're curious about what we do or what it's like to work with us, you'll find everything you need at 5elk.com. And if you're leading people but want to find ways to do it better, make sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or your podcast platform of choice so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. Remember, you're not meant to have it all worked out. Just keep taking the next step. Asenso tayo!